The deep space research vessel moved quietly through a lonely region far from busy trade routes. Most ships never passed this area because there was nothing to see. No planets, no stations, no useful minerals. Just empty darkness and a silent old star that had almost burned itself out. The research team chose this place only because they were testing new long-range scanners. They expected a slow day with nothing surprising, maybe a few readings of dust or small rocks drifting around. No one imagined their scanners would pick up something so strange that it would change what people believed about human history. Everything began when one crew member reported an odd reading. At first, everyone thought the sensors were malfunctioning because the signal was too large to belong to any normal ship. The shape detected in the darkness looked like metal, but far bigger than anything humans had ever built. The team repeated the scan several times to confirm it was not a glitch. Every reading came back with the same result. Something massive was out there, floating silently near the fading star. The mood on the vessel changed fast. People who had been relaxed now sat upright. One of them zoomed in the visuals, but the star was weak and did not give enough light. All they saw was a long black shape, half hidden in shadows. The captain decided to move closer at a slow pace. No one knew whether the object was dangerous, so there was no reason to rush. As they moved closer, the scanners picked up more shapes. Not one, not two. A full cluster of giant metallic structures was surrounding the star like sleeping giants waiting to be found. The crew whispered among themselves. Some thought these could be old mining stations left behind long ago. Others believed they might be parts of ships that had crashed and joined together over time. But deep down, no one could explain why everything looked too organized. The shapes were positioned almost like a formation, facing the same direction. Nothing about their arrangement suggested an accident or simple debris. When the research vessel got close enough, the weak glow of the dying star finally touched the surface of the nearest object. What they saw made everyone fall silent. It was not a station or a broken structure. It was a full warship, a colossal one. Its hull was smooth and dark, covered with strange patterns that looked older than any recorded human design. The lines had a curve that matched early earth carvings found in ancient ruins, but those ruins were from a time long before humans ever left their home planet. The crew stared at the carvings, confused and amazed. No one knew what to say. They had never seen anything like it. The research vessel circled slowly around the giant warship. The cameras captured every part of the hull. There were no modern markings, no signs of any known space faction, no serial numbers, no distress signals, no lights. It was a silent metal mountain drifting through space like a ghost from a forgotten time. Then someone noticed something even stranger. The ship's surface showed no signs of rust or wear. No cracks, no holes, no damage from space dust. It looked untouched, almost as if it had been built yesterday. One of the crew whispered that it could not be possible. A ship this old should have fallen apart or been torn by asteroids. Yet everything looked perfect. Too perfect. The captain ordered a scan of the interior. This time the readings came back with shapes that looked like sealed rooms, power lines, and empty control halls. The ship was not dead. It was in perfect condition, just without any active power. Before anyone could decide what to do next, the scanners detected another set of structures nearby. The vessel moved closer to the next object. It was another warship of the same type. Then another. Soon they saw 7 of them, all gigantic, all silent, all arranged around the dying star like guardians waiting for something that never arrived. The discovery felt impossible to explain. Humans had no record of building anything like this. No early civilization on Earth had the ability to travel beyond their own sky, let alone build warships larger than modern battleships. Yet the markings on the hulls were undeniably human in origin. The patterns resembled the earliest symbols found in caves and old stone sites. But those carvings belonged to a time when humans had barely learned to make tools. The crew sent all details to Central Command. They knew this discovery would shake people across human space. Scientists would argue. Historians would panic. Leaders would want answers. The research team tried to stay calm, but the weight of the discovery pressed on their thoughts. They wondered whether everything they knew about human origins was incomplete. Maybe a forgotten age existed before written history. Maybe humans had lived more than one cycle of rise and fall. The thought made everyone uneasy. While the team continued their scans, the ship's lights flickered as though reacting to something nearby. For a moment, everyone froze. Then the lights stabilized again. They decided it was only the equipment adjusting to the unusual environment. Still, the idea that the ancient warship could be waking made some of them nervous. They did not know whether the ships were friendly or hostile. All they knew was that the metal giants were not ordinary relics. They were built with purpose. The research vessel kept moving around the silent fleet. Every warship had the same smooth curves, the same strange patterns, and the same undamaged structure. Some parts of the hull looked reinforced with material that modern engineers had never seen. It felt like something from another age, something too advanced to belong to old humanity, yet too familiar to be alien. The mystery pulled everyone deeper into curiosity and fear at the same time. The captain decided to send a small probe to enter the first warship through a narrow gap in the hull. The probe flew inside. Its camera feed appeared on the main screen. The interior was dark. The walls were made of metal that looked strong and flawless. Thick beams supported the structure. There were walkways and platforms arranged in a way that suggested large crews once lived or worked inside. But the halls were empty. No machinery moved. No lights blinked. Everything stood still. The probe floated deeper inside until it reached a wide chamber. The floor was embedded with circular patterns. When the lights from the probe hit the designs, the shapes reflected with a faint glow. The crew wondered if these patterns served as controls or symbols. No one knew. But one thing was clear. A civilization with deep knowledge built this place. The chamber looked like the heart of the ship. Back on the research vessel, tension grew. Every new discovery raised more questions. Why were these ships here? Who built them? How could they be so old yet so advanced? Why did they remain hidden for so long? Why were they all pointed toward the same empty direction? Some crew members whispered that maybe the ancient humans were preparing for something when they vanished. Something big enough to require a whole fleet of giant warships. Central Command responded to the findings. They instructed the team not to touch anything else and to maintain distance. They were sending multiple expert teams, including engineers, archaeologists, and scientists. The research crew knew this was only the beginning. They had stumbled on something that could rewrite history, something that could change what humanity believed about its past. As the research vessel drifted slowly between the silent giants, the crew could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not by a living being, but by the ships themselves. It felt as if the vessels recognized their presence. The strange patterns on the hulls almost seemed to shimmer softly. The crew wondered if the ships were just waiting for someone to find them, waiting for a reason to wake. Hours passed, but the sense of tension never left the air. Everyone worked quietly, trying to understand the ships without disturbing them. The deeper the team looked, the more mysterious everything became. These warships were not random relics. They were guardians from a forgotten age. And now they had been found again. The part ended with one silent truth. Whatever these ancient warships represented, this discovery was only the beginning. Humanity had just uncovered the first piece of a story older than the galaxy itself. The arrival of the expert teams changed everything around the silent warships. The once quiet research vessel now drifted beside a group of larger ships filled with engineers, analysts, historians, and technical crews who had been rushed across half the sector after hearing the unbelievable report. No one spoke loudly. Everyone carried the same mix of excitement and fear. It was not every day that humanity found something this old, this perfect, and this mysterious dot. As the teams prepared to board the nearest warship, people stood by the windows of their vessels, staring at the giant shape floating beside them. Even though they had seen the first recordings, nothing compared to seeing the warship in person. It was huge, dark, and silent, yet it somehow felt alive. The markings on the hull looked almost organic, like the ship had grown rather than been built. One of the engineers whispered to another that the ship was older than any known human technology. Someone else said it looked like something built with knowledge lost a long time ago. No one argued. Everyone knew the truth was sitting right in front of them. Before going inside, the teams set up a rotating set of lights to brighten the hull. Bright beams swept across the metal surface. The patterns on the hull glowed faintly, as if reacting to the warmth of the lights. The experts paused. They were not sure if the glow was natural or a reaction from the ship. But the glow faded again, and the hull went dark. A small craft attached itself to the warship's surface. The engineers opened a portable airlock and slowly stepped inside the narrow passage. The floor was smooth and cold. The air felt still and untouched. They checked their instruments and found something strange. The oxygen level inside the ship was low, but not zero. It suggested that the ship had once supported life, but had been sealed for a very long time. The passage opened into a wide hallway. The walls were curved, and the floor had lines running across it. The lights from the engineers' suits reflected softly off the metal. Everything inside looked untouched. No dust, no signs of decay. It was as if the ship had been frozen in time. They moved deeper inside, mapping every area they entered. Each room was larger than the last. There were command sections, resting areas, machinery chambers, and wide corridors built for a large crew to move quickly. The structure felt more like a floating fortress than a simple warship. While the team explored the chambers, one engineer walked up to a tall wall covered with circular patterns. The circles were arranged in a strange formation, and each one had a glowing core that pulsed faintly when light hit it. The engineer reached out slowly and placed a hand near one of the circles. He did not touch it, but his sensor picked up something unusual. The metal was giving off a weak energy signal, like a heartbeat that had been silent for centuries, but still existed deep inside. The team reported this immediately. More experts moved in with scanning equipment. They found that the entire warship carried a thin layer of dormant energy, almost like a sleeping creature. It was not dead. It was waiting. Outside the warship, the leaders of the operation discussed what to do next. They wanted to learn everything they could, but they did not want to activate anything accidentally. The crew remembered how the research vessel connected with a panel by mistake earlier. That moment had made the ship glow for a second. It proved the warship could still respond. But no one understood how or why inside the ship. The engineers continued exploring. They reached a large chamber that looked like the central control area. The room had a wide platform with a circular centerpiece. Around it were hundreds of small interfaces built into the walls. The place felt like the heart of the entire vessel. One of the analysts stepped toward the central platform. His scanner picked up more dormant energy, stronger than anywhere else in the ship. He reported this back to the others, and within minutes, a team of experts gathered around the platform. They noticed something unusual. Beneath the platform were thin channels, like veins, leading across the floor. They followed one of the channels with their lights and found that the lines connected the entire ship. It was not just advanced engineering. It felt like the ship had been designed as one unified system, where every part worked together like a living organism. Another engineer walked toward a console built into the wall. The console had no buttons, no switches, only smooth metal shaped like a shallow bowl. He tried shining his light into it. The metal surface shifted slightly, almost like rippling water. The team stepped back. No one touched it again. Outside, the scanners detected a sudden rise in energy coming from the warship. The experts inside froze. They checked the floor, the walls, the signals. The power had increased by a small amount, but it was noticeable. The ship had reacted to something. The control teams ordered everyone to stay still. No movement. No interference. They monitored the readings carefully. After a few minutes, the energy level dropped again. Everything went still. The teams decided to proceed with caution. They wanted to learn how these ancient warships worked. They set up monitoring devices in every chamber and hallway. They connected portable power supplies to test how the ship reacted to small energy inputs. For a long time, nothing changed. Everything was silent. Then someone made a discovery dot in one of the deeper chambers. Behind a sealed door, a historian found a massive structure that looked like a capsule. It was shaped like an upright cylinder, with strange writing carved into the surface. The carvings were similar to the ones on the hull. The historian recognized some shapes from old Earth symbols used thousands of years ago, but the meaning was lost. The capsule had a faint glow inside it. When the lights from the historian's suit hit the writing, the glow became brighter. The historian stepped back. The glow pulsed once, then faded again. When the team heard about this, many became convinced the ship had been built around some type of ancient power source, something stable enough to survive for countless ages. Meanwhile, another team opened a narrow passage that led to a small control room. This room had a wide screen-like surface. When they shined their lights on it, the panel lit up. The engineers stared in shock as strange symbols appeared across the surface. The symbols shifted and rearranged themselves until they formed a pattern the team had seen on the hull. The ship had recognized the presence of humans. The engineers carefully backed away. They had not touched anything. The ship activated on its own. The floating symbols remained on the screen without moving. It seemed to be waiting for something, but no one knew what. Outside the warship, debates grew heavier. Some experts believed this ancient fleet belonged to a forgotten chapter of human history. Maybe a time before recorded civilization. Maybe a time erased by disaster or something far worse. Others argued that the ships could belong to a branch of early humans who left Earth long before modern humans existed. A civilization that rose, expanded, and vanished without leaving a trace behind. As the discussions continued, the warship itself made the next move. Hours after the engineers left the control room, the symbols on the screen shifted again. A soft hum spread through the entire ship. The dormant energy levels rose on every gauge. The lights beneath the floor glowed faintly, forming patterns that looked like pathways waking from a long dream. The crew outside rushed to get readings. The energy inside the ship reached a stable level, not dangerous, but powerful enough to make everyone nervous. People inside stayed calm, but ready to evacuate if needed. Then something unexpected happened. A soft vibration moved through the metal floor. The symbols on the control screen rearranged one last time. The entire ship produced a sound like a deep breath. The hum faded. The lights dimmed. The ship returned to silence, but the energy did not disappear. It stayed active. The teams realized the ship had awakened its basic systems. It was not fully alive, but it was no longer asleep either. The experts took a moment to fully understand what had happened. The ship had responded not to commands, but to presence. Something about modern humans had triggered the ship's slow awakening. Maybe it recognized them as descendants. Maybe it carried some ancient connection coded into its systems. No one could be sure. What they did know was simple. These warships were not dead machines. They were built with purpose. They were made to wait. And now, after countless ages, they were beginning to open their eyes. The teams knew this was only the start. They had more ships to explore, more mysteries to uncover, and more signs that whatever these ancient humans feared might still exist somewhere in the dark dot. This was the moment everyone felt the truth deep inside. The past was not gone. It was waking up. Inside the silent warship, the atmosphere felt different now. It no longer gave the feeling of an abandoned relic. Instead, it felt like something slowly waking from a long sleep. The faint hum under the metal floor was gentle but steady, like a heartbeat returning after ages of silence. The experts who had remained inside to monitor the systems were careful with every step. No one touched anything unless absolutely necessary. Everyone knew the ship was responding on its own, and they did not want to trigger something accidentally. The engineers gathered again inside the central chamber. The same place where the platforms and channels looked like veins running across the floor. They checked the displays, the glowing lines, and the soft pulsing of dormant systems. Nothing appeared harmful, but everything felt alive. One of the analysts pointed out that the ship was not powering up randomly. The patterns moving across the walls looked organized, as if the vessel was unlocking one layer of memory after another, while the teams recorded their observations. A soft light appeared in the center of the chamber. It was weak at first, barely noticeable, but it slowly grew brighter. The source was not a machine or a console. It came from thin air, forming a faint shape like a mist. The experts stepped back, unsure if they were witnessing an energy leak or a projection. The light gathered into a clearer form, and soon it became obvious that it was a holographic figure. The image did not show a person clearly. It looked like a rough outline, as if the ship had stored memories of someone, but only kept the shape, not full details. The outline stood tall and strong, with broad shoulders and a quiet posture. There were no facial features, no clear clothing, nothing that could be identified. But the shape looked human. Very human. The projection raised one arm slowly. The motion was gentle, almost hesitant, like someone remembering how to move. The engineers recorded every second. The hologram scanned the room as if searching for something familiar. Then the projection froze. A thin wave of symbols rippled across its surface. The experts realized the ship was trying to communicate. It was digging into its memory and trying to express something that had been locked away for an unimaginable length of time. The hologram suddenly flickered, and the chamber darkened. The entire ship grew silent again. Many feared the system had shut down, but before anyone could even speak, the hologram reappeared, brighter and more stable. This time, the lights around the chamber dimmed on purpose, almost like the ship wanted the humans to focus only on the projection. The hologram stretched its arm toward the wall. The symbols from the wall began to glow. They shifted, rearranged, and formed a large pattern. The pattern then transformed into a moving picture. And just like that, everyone realized what they were seeing. It was a recording from the past. The scene showed a galaxy that looked much younger than the one they knew. The stars were fewer and brighter. Dust clouds swirled in great shapes. It looked peaceful at first, like a quiet universe just beginning to take form. But then the image zoomed toward a cluster of stars. Dozens of large ships appeared in formation. They were the same shape as the ancient warships floating outside. They glowed with deep energy, shining like guardians of the young galaxy. The engineers watching the recording could hardly breathe. These ships were not lost or damaged in the recording. They were active, organized, and commanded by ancient humans who stood proudly on their decks. The humans in the recordings looked similar to modern humans, but wore clothing that fit their era. Their designs were simple yet strong. They moved with confidence, as if standing on the bridge of such a giant ship was normal for them. The recording continued. It showed planets forming and early civilizations developing. These ancient humans were traveling across young star systems, long before modern humanity learned to build rockets. They appeared to be explorers at first. They landed on young planets covered in oceans and forests. They helped early life grow by stabilizing harmful conditions. They spread knowledge to areas where life struggled. It looked like they wanted to protect the newborn galaxy, not conquer it. The scene shifted again. This time, the recording grew darker. Strange bursts of light flashed across the sky. The ancient humans were now building more ships. Bigger ones. Stronger ones. The engineers watching the recording felt a chill as the hologram displayed new symbols, clearly marking a period of conflict. Something had disturbed the young galaxy. Something powerful enough to make these ancient humans prepare for war. The recording showed shadows moving through space. They did not have clear shapes. They were not ships or creatures. They looked like storms made of darkness. The storms moved fast, tearing through early star systems and scattering newborn planets. The ancient humans reacted quickly. Their ships formed giant barriers of energy. The storms hit these barriers with overwhelming force, but the warships held steady. The engineers inside the chamber exchanged worried looks. Whatever those storms were, they were not natural. They were intelligent or controlled by something intelligent. The hologram changed again. It showed long battles across empty regions of space. The ancient humans fought the storms with beams of light that cut through the darkness. They deployed shields that stretched across thousands of kilometers. But the storms continued to return. The recording showed centuries of conflict. The ancient humans won many times, but the storms always came back. Then the scene shifted to something more hopeful. The ancient humans built a final fleet. A fleet far larger than the one discovered by the research teams. They placed these fleets around key areas of the young galaxy, forming protective circles. They activated deep systems inside the ships, the same kind of systems that were now waking slowly inside the warships near the dying star. A new message appeared on the wall. The symbols translated themselves into something the analysts could understand. The message was simple. This fleet will remain until the danger returns. The experts inside the chamber felt a heavy silence settle around them. These ships were not built to travel or expand. They were built to wait, to sleep, to guard the galaxy long after the ancient humans themselves were gone. The recording continued, showing the ancient humans gathering in a large chamber on one of the ships. They activated a device that looked like a massive sphere. Light spread across the screen, then faded. When the image cleared, the ancient humans were gone. Taken somewhere, or maybe erased by time. The fleet remained, drifting in silence, loyal to its final order. Then the hologram ended. The entire chamber fell quiet. None of the experts spoke for several minutes. They were overwhelmed. They had just watched a memory from a forgotten age, a time when humans ruled the stars before recorded history even started. The engineers slowly stepped forward. One of them touched a glowing line with a small scanner. The line responded with a single pulse. It felt almost like acknowledgement. The ship had shared its story willingly. Outside, Central Command received the full recording. They studied it with urgency. They compared the energy signatures in the recordings with modern data. Soon, a chilling discovery was made. The strange storms shown in the hologram were giving off a signal, identical to the one scientists had detected. near distant regions of space. Just weeks earlier, the threat the ancient humans fought was returning. Inside the warship, the dim lights brightened once more. The vessel had finished sharing its memories. Now it was preparing for something else. The deep hum under the floor grew stronger. The ship had told its story. Now it was waiting for the next step. The experts knew they had uncovered something far greater than a simple relic. They had found a warning. A message left by ancestors who lived before history. And now, the future depended on understanding that message before it was too late. After the ship finished showing the ancient recordings, a heavy stillness settled across every chamber. The experts felt the weight of what they had seen. Their minds spun with thoughts, questions, and fear that they didn't want to admit out loud. They had just witnessed a forgotten history where ancient humans fought something powerful enough to threaten a young galaxy. And now, the same strange energy had been detected again in distant space. The coincidence was too perfect to ignore. Central Command instructed every vessel in the area to stay on high alert. More research ships were sent immediately. Engineers were told to strengthen scans, monitor every shift in the warship's energy, and prepare for anything unusual. No one argued. Everyone knew something was changing, even if no alarms had gone off yet. Inside the ancient warship, the low hum coming from the floor grew steadier. It felt like the heart of the ship was beating again after an endless pause. The glowing pathways became brighter, forming clearer patterns that slowly connected the chambers, corridors, and control areas. It was as if the ship was stretching after a long sleep and preparing to stand once more. The experts moved carefully. They followed the lights, studying how the patterns were forming. One technician noticed that the energy lines were not random. They were guiding movement toward a deeper section of the ship. Some of the team members followed the faint glow and discovered a sealed door that none of the earlier scans had revealed. The door had thick edges and carvings, similar to the ones on the capsule they had seen earlier. When the light from their suits touched the carvings, the symbols rearranged themselves, as if they were reacting to the presence of humans again. One of the engineers moved a scanning device closer. The sealed door let out a faint vibration, almost like it was recognizing something. The team stepped back. They didn't want to force anything. Moments later, the door slid open on its own, releasing a slow wave of cold air. Behind it was a narrow passage filled with faint blue light. It felt untouched, ancient, and important. The team followed the passage until it opened into a large circular chamber. This new chamber looked different from the others. It had tall walls with layered rings of symbols. At the center stood a structure that looked like a giant crystal, dark and unmoving. The crystal was surrounded by thin metal frames, almost like supports that were holding it in place. The experts took slow breaths. They could feel something coming from the crystal, a quiet, steady pulse. One analyst whispered that the crystal might be a core. Not a power core like modern ships used, but something far older and far more advanced. Another team member pointed to the supports and said the crystal was likely connected to the ship's central system. If it fully awakened, the entire warship would power up, maybe even the whole fleet. While they examined the crystal, a sudden disturbance shook the outer hull. It wasn't strong, but it was enough to make the lights flicker. The engineers outside reported strange readings. Something in deep space had released a wave of unusual energy. It wasn't close, but it was strong enough for their sensors to detect. Central Command checked the readings. They compared them to the symbols in the ancient recording. The match was undeniable. The storms from the past, the ones that had destroyed early star systems, had returned somewhere far across the galaxy. Inside the chamber, the crystal pulsed brighter, responding to the disturbance. The shifting rings on the walls began moving like a giant clock turning after ages. The ship wasn't just waking up anymore. It was reacting to the threat. The analysts realized the ancient system had been built to detect the enemy. The moment the old energy signature reappeared in the galaxy, the ship's internal alarms began reactivating. The experts tried calming themselves. They were far from the danger, but the seriousness of the situation could no longer be ignored. The crystal in the center brightened again. The entire chamber filled with a soft, deep vibration. A new hologram appeared above the crystal. This time, it wasn't a figure from the past. It was a map, an ancient star chart, with bright points marked across it. The map showed where the old fleet had once fought. Then the points on the map moved, highlighting the locations where the storms had appeared long ago. One point blinked twice, as if marking the exact location where the first ancient battle took place. Then the hologram shifted, showing the current galaxy. The same point blinked again, now in modern coordinates. The threat was returning in the same place. The team felt cold fear. It meant the pattern was repeating. Whatever those storms were, they followed cycles far longer than human history. They were not random events. They were a returning danger. Outside the warship, the ships monitoring the ancient vessel reported stronger readings. The dormant fleets floating near the dying star were beginning to show signs of activation too. The experts inside the warship received the update with heavy expressions. It wasn't one ship waking anymore. It was the whole fleet inside the central chamber. The ancient hologram kept shifting, now showing the warships forming a massive defensive line. The ship was instructing them. It was showing the formation the ancient humans had used. It was preparing for war again. The engineers weren't sure if they should guide the ship or let it act on its own. But the ship had already made its choice. It would follow the last orders left by its creators. More vibrations echoed through the halls. The glowing lines on the floor stretched farther, reaching the control rooms and powering consoles that had been dead earlier. The once dim corridors brightened. The hum deepened. The ship was awakening layer by layer, with purpose, not confusion. A technician in the central chamber noticed something alarming. The crystal in the center was almost fully active now. It glowed brightly, like a star trapped inside clear stone. The chamber walls vibrated with energy, and the symbols around them reacted by forming new patterns. They realized the ship was shifting from passive mode to defensive mode. The ship outside, the same massive warship that had floated silent for ages, began drifting slowly. The engines, untouched by time, released soft pulses of energy. Not enough to move at high speed, but enough to show that the engines were working properly. The entire fleet around it seemed to respond. Several warships tilted gently, turning their sides as if aligning with each other. This wasn't random movement. This was formation. One of the analysts outside reported the readings with a shaken voice. The ancient fleet was taking position. It wasn't waiting for orders from modern humans. It was following protocols written long before anyone alive had been born. They were stepping forward to defend the galaxy once more. Inside the ancient ship, the hologram shifted again. Now it showed a new message. The symbols translated themselves slowly, revealing a simple phrase: Defense protocol reactivated. The experts exchanged heavy looks. They knew the meaning. The fleet had recognized the old enemy. It was preparing to face it, just as it had done in the forgotten past. Back on the research vessel, some wondered if modern humans should try to stop the ancient ships, but the idea felt pointless. No modern technology was advanced enough to overpower or control something built by a civilization that had shaped the early galaxy itself. The ancient systems were beyond anything they understood. Their ships were weapons designed for threats humanity had never faced. Inside the ancient ship, the vibration settled into a steady rhythm. The crystal stopped glowing brighter, settling into a powerful, calm pulse. The ship had finished its preparations. It was ready, One of the experts placed a hand against a glowing line on the wall. The line responded with a warm pulse. It almost felt like the ship was reassuring them, telling them that this wasn't the end, but the beginning of something they needed to face together. Sometimes ancient warnings return not to frighten, but to guide Doc, and now, with the threat rising across distant space, the forgotten fleet was awake again, standing as silent guardians of a galaxy that no longer remembered them. The modern world was about to face something older than its own history, and the ancient ships were already moving into formation for the battle no one expected to return. The final message that spread across the ancient warships continued to echo inside the minds of everyone who had seen it. People on the research vessel felt a strange mix of fear and hope as they watched the enormous relics drift like silent guardians. For a moment, the crew simply stared at the glowing symbols and shifting lights inside the command room, unsure of what they were supposed to do next. No one had ever expected ancient human technology to wake up again after so many ages. The idea felt too big, almost impossible to accept, yet they had all seen the evidence with their own eyes. Across human space, leaders gathered in hurried meetings. Screens lit up inside large halls, with officials, scientists, and military advisors trying to make sense of everything. News of the ancient threat returning had already reached thousands of people, although the full truth was kept hidden from the public to avoid panic. Many officials argued about what humanity should do. Some believed they needed to stay out of it, saying it was too dangerous to rely on ships nobody understood. Others argued that turning away could put every colony in danger if the threat grew stronger. Everyone knew that avoiding the decision would not make the situation disappear. Inside the research ship, a small group tried to understand how these ancient machines worked. They had been examining one of the warships closely and noticed strange patterns inside the walls, almost like the ship was reacting to their presence. The ancient ship didn't behave like metal or circuits. It responded like something living, something aware. When anyone stepped closer, the ship's surface changed color in soft waves, as if sensing their emotions. It was strange, but not frightening, more like the ship recognized them. One of the engineers placed a hand on the glowing panel again, and a soft pulse ran across the room. For a second, everyone held their breath, thinking they had activated something dangerous. But instead of alarms or threats, the ship showed a calm light and created a simple message. It pulsed slowly, almost like a greeting. The ship was accepting them. It didn't see them as intruders. It saw them as the descendants of those who had once commanded these machines. The crew exchanged surprised looks. They knew what this meant. The ancient warship was offering limited control, but control nonetheless. It was not taking orders, but it was willing to cooperate. This changed everything. If the ancient fleet was ready to move and recognized modern humans, then humans were no longer just observers. They were part of the story. The idea settled slowly in everyone's mind. Humanity had always believed it was rising step by step, reaching toward the stars for the first time. But now they understood they were not the first. They were continuing. A journey started long before the modern galaxy formed. They were carrying a legacy older than memory. Far out in space, the ancient ships began to move again. They aligned themselves near the region where the strange energy bursts had appeared. The movement was graceful but firm, like an experienced army preparing for a familiar challenge. The research crew watched from a safe distance, feeling small compared to the massive ships that glowed with soft gold patterns across their hulls. The ships made no sound, but their presence was powerful. Anyone who looked at them felt a deep weight, as if they were standing in front of history itself. As the ancient fleet took formation, they created a shield line facing the unknown disturbance. It was clear they were preparing for whatever was coming. It was also clear they were not enough alone. They needed support. They needed modern humans to stand beside them. The moment this became obvious, many people on the research vessel felt something shift inside them. It wasn't fear anymore. It was responsibility. For the first time, they understood they were part of a much bigger story than they were taught. Back on the human homeworlds, a quiet tension filled the atmosphere. A message had been sent from the research team describing what the ancient ship had done. That message carried a simple truth. Humanity was not fighting alone. The ancient fleet was waiting for them. It was an invitation. Now the leaders had to decide whether to accept it. The debate grew more intense. Some leaders were afraid, worried that joining the ancient fleet could pull humanity into a conflict they didn't understand. They feared sacrificing modern ships and people in a battle that might have started millions of years ago. But others felt the opposite. They argued that humanity had already grown strong enough to face challenges. They had colonies, ships, and people who believed in exploring and protecting the galaxy. Turning away now would not only be cowardly, it would also betray the legacy of those who came before. The final decision was not easy. But after hours of discussion, one message was sent to the research team. It was short, simple, and clear. Humanity would stand with the ancient fleet. They would not run from something their ancestors had once faced. They would stand together. On the research vessel, people felt a wave of determination spread through them when they read the message. They began preparing their own ships to join the ancient formation. They ran checks, tested systems, and made sure no small error could cause problems during the approach. Everyone worked with care and focus, knowing that what they were about to do mattered. It wasn't just another mission. It was a step into a forgotten past and a step toward an uncertain future. As the modern ships approached the ancient warships, something remarkable happened. The ancient vessels opened wide arcs of light along their sides, almost like welcoming pathways. These lights moved slowly, guiding the modern vessels into position. It felt like a moment of unity between two eras separated by unimaginable time. Modern humans and ancient humans, connected again through machines built by hands that had vanished from history. The modern fleet settled beside the ancient one. A view from the windows was breathtaking. On one side were sleek, modern ships built with new technology. On the other side were the giant relics, glowing with marks that seemed older than stars. The crews felt honored to stand there. They felt a sense of belonging they had never felt before. They were not outsiders anymore. They were the inheritors of a lost age. Then something changed in the space ahead. The disturbance grew stronger. Waves of strange light spread through the darkness, twisting gently as if trying to break free. The ancient ships reacted instantly. Their hulls brightened, and the symbols along their sides glowed in lines that stretched across the darkness. The modern ships also activated shields and prepared for whatever was coming. But despite the tension, there was no panic. There was only determination. Everyone watched the disturbance carefully. The energy pulses became brighter and faster, like a heartbeat rising. The ancient ships moved into a protective shield shape, forming a curved barrier in front of both fleets. It was clear they had done this before. They knew how to protect life behind them. They were prepared to take the first strike if anything emerged. Inside the modern ships, the crews stood ready. Some whispered to themselves. Some took deep breaths. But everyone felt the same thing. They were not alone. They were part of something larger than anyone had ever imagined. They were the children of a civilization that had once shaped the early galaxy. And now they were ready to rise again. The story did not end with a victory or defeat. It ended with unity. The ancient fleet and the modern fleet stood together in the vast darkness, strong and calm. The disturbance continued to pulse, but the fleets did not fear it. They were ready. They were prepared to face whatever came next, and as the lights of the ancient ships glowed brighter, the crews knew one thing for sure. Humanity had found its true legacy, not written in books or records, but hidden in the silent depths of space. A legacy older than memory, older than the galaxy itself. A legacy that now lived within them as they faced the future with courage.